Hotel clerk refuses room to a black woman, not knowing she's the new owner of the chain. Ma'am, this isn't that kind of hotel. We don't rent to people who walk in off the street. The words cut through the humid Charleston air like glass. It was late afternoon, the lobby of the Magnolia Grand Hotel glowing with polished marble and brass fixtures. Tourists in linen and pearls drifted past, their laughter echoing under the chandelier. And there, at the check-in counter, stood Clara Jefferson, 58, wearing a soft blue dress and holding her worn leather purse tight against her chest. She blinked, not sure she'd heard right. "Excuse me?" The young clerk, Rebecca Shaw, didn't look up from her computer. Her manicured fingers tapped the keyboard with quick, practiced irritation. "I said we don't rent to walk-ins without a reservation. Especially not on weekends." Clara looked around. 3 people had just checked in before her, each without a reservation, each greeted with a smile. She'd watched them. A white couple from Ohio. A group of college kids laughing about the beach. No one had been told we don't rent to walk-ins. "I can pay right now," Clara said quietly. "One night. Standard room. That's all I need." Rebecca finally looked up. Her eyes scanned Clara's face, then dropped to her purse and the slight tear in her sleeve. Her expression hardened, polite but cold. "Ma'am, our rooms start at $250 a night. You might want to try the motel down on Meeting Street. They're more affordable." The words hit harder than a slap. The man in line behind Clara shifted awkwardly, pretending to look at his phone. A security guard near the entrance straightened, watching. The silence pressed heavy. "I said I can pay," Clara repeated, her voice trembling but firm. "You haven't even asked for my ID." Rebecca sighed and lowered her voice, as if sharing a secret. "Look, I'm just trying to save you some embarrassment. This is a luxury property," not Clara's hand tightened around her purse. "Not what?" The clerk hesitated, then forced a tight smile. "Not the kind of place people just walk into from the street. You understand?" Every word dripped with the same tone Clara had heard her whole life. "Not your kind. Not meant for you." A family walked in behind her, a man in a polo shirt, his wife holding a designer bag. "Checking in for the weekend," he called cheerfully. Rebecca's face, transformed, bright smile, cheerful tone. "Of course. Welcome to the Magnolia Grand." She reached for their cards without hesitation. Clara stood frozen. Heat rose behind her eyes. She'd faced this before at restaurants, at car dealerships, in banks. Always polite, always smiling, but the message was the same. You don't belong here. The security guard took a slow step forward. "Everything all right, Becky?" "She's just leaving," Rebecca replied quickly. Clara's voice cracked. "I'm not leaving. I came here to stay." A few guests looked up. The room tightened. Rebecca leaned closer, whispering, "Ma'am, don't make a scene. I'm calling my manager." Clara exhaled, steadying herself. Her heart pounded, not from anger but from the sting of something deeper, the exhaustion of having to prove worth in every room. She set her purse gently on the counter. "You can call whoever you need, but you're not going to talk to me like that." Rebecca froze, surprised by the quiet strength in Clara's voice. "I've spent 30 years traveling for work," Clara continued. "Paid for more hotel nights than you've probably worked in your life. So, you can drop that tone." A couple nearby nodded quietly. Someone whispered, "Good for her." Before Rebecca could respond, a voice called from behind the front desk. "What's going on here?" The assistant manager appeared tall, white shirt crisp, name tag shining. He looked between them, then at the computer screen, then back to Clara. "Ma'am, is there a problem?" Rebecca spoke first, quick and defensive. "She's insisting on a room. Says she can pay cash. No reservation." "I didn't say cash," Clara interjected. "I said I can pay." The manager frowned, stepping closer to the monitor. "What's your name, ma'am?" "Clara Jefferson." He hesitated for a fraction of a second, just long enough for her to notice. Then he forced a smile. "I'm sorry, Miss Jefferson, but all our standard rooms are occupied." Behind him, the family from Ohio was being handed their keys for a standard room with a city view. Clara's breath hitched. She gathered her purse and straightened her shoulders. "You'll regret this," she said quietly, not as a threat, but as a truth. As she turned to leave, the doorman opened the glass doors, letting in the golden light of the Charleston sunset. The reflection in the glass caught her expression, not broken, but burning. Outside, she took one steady breath, the kind that comes before a storm. But what Rebecca didn't know, what no one in that lobby could have guessed, was that the woman she just turned away didn't need a reservation to belong there. Because soon Clara Jefferson would walk back through those same doors not as a guest, but as the new owner. Clara Jefferson sat in her car, the air conditioner humming against the sticky South Carolina heat. Her hands were still shaking as she gripped the steering wheel. Through the windshield, the Magnolia Grand glimmered like a palace white pillars, gold lettering, the kind of place that called itself historic, but felt like history she was never meant to touch. For a long moment, she didn't start the engine. She just breathed, staring at her own reflection in the rearview mirror. 60 years of life stared back, lines of strength, not age. Not the kind of place people walk in from the street, she whispered bitterly, repeating the clerk's words. Her chest tightened, because she'd heard that sentence before, different words, same message. The memory came fast, uninvited. She was 16 again, standing outside the Pinecrest Diner on a hot July afternoon. A help-wanted sign hung in the window. She had her application neatly folded, pressed shirt, polished shoes. When she stepped inside, the Onera red-faced man with suspenders didn't even glance at her form. He just said, "We're not hiring right now." An hour later, she walked by again and saw him hand the same sign to a white girl from her high school. That was 1981, but it might as well have been yesterday. Clara blinked hard, pushing the memory away. She turned the key, the old Honda coughing before it started. Her knuckles were pale against the wheel as she drove down Meeting Street, passing shops and restaurants that always felt not for her. As she stopped at a red light, another memory surfaced, this one sharper. 10 years ago, at a corporate conference in Atlanta, Clara had been the only black regional manager in the room. The hotel staff had mistaken her for the event planner, then later asked her to fetch coffee for the guests. She had smiled politely, corrected them, and led the quarterly presentation that closed a six-figure deal. That was the day she learned that dignity was something you carried like armor, even when no one else could see it. And yet, sitting there in her car now, she felt that armor crack. She parked by the riverfront, watching boats drift lazily across the Cooper River. The smell of salt and diesel filled the air. Her phone buzzed with a text from her niece. "You made it to Charleston yet, Auntie C?" Clara didn't answer. She just stared at the water. She'd come to Charleston for a reason, not for a vacation. Not even for rest. She'd come to quietly check on a business deal she'd signed 3 months ago. Something big. Something she hadn't told her family about yet. She smiled to herself, thinking of the irony. All that paperwork, all those contracts with lawyers and brokers, all those signatures, hers among them. And still, a girl behind a hotel desk had looked at her and decided she wasn't the kind of guest they wanted. Her phone buzzed again, pulling her back. This time it was a voicemail from an old friend, Lena, the woman who'd been with her through decades of ups and downs. "Girl, I saw your picture in that business magazine. You didn't tell me you were out here buying hotels now. You better call me before I see you on TV." Clara chuckled softly, but the laughter faded quick. Buying hotels, owning property, creating safe spaces for travelers who looked like her. That was supposed to be the dream, her dream. Now she couldn't even get a room in one of them. She leaned her head against the steering wheel, eyes closed. The pain wasn't just about what happened, it was about how familiar it felt. The same disbelief, the same sting. It didn't matter how many degrees she had, how many boards she sat on, how successful she'd become. To some people, she'd always be less than. But something inside her shifted, slowly, quietly. She thought of her father, how he used to tell her, "Baby girl, we don't fight with our fists no more. We fight with our presence. You show up. You stand tall. You make 'em see you." She sat up, straightening her back. No, she decided. She wasn't going to run this time. She opened her purse and pulled out the folded copy of the Magnolia Grand acquisition documents, the ones signed by the holding company she now co-owned. Her name was right there, bold and legal. Clara L. Jefferson, partner and investor, Magnolia Hospitality Group. Her breath steadied. "All right," she murmured to herself, her voice low but sharp as steel. "Let's see who owns this place now." She put the car in gear and turned back toward the hotel, the sunset painting the sky in blood orange and gold. Inside her chest, the old wound still burned, but beneath it a new fire had started to rise. As Clara turned the car back toward the Magnolia Grand, the evening sun dipped low, burning gold against the horizon. The humiliation still stung, but something deeper had awakened inside her, a quiet, rising fire. And soon, everyone in that hotel was going to feel its heat. By the time Clara drove back to the Magnolia Grand, the streetlights had flickered on. The marble front glowed beneath the amber lights, as if the building itself had no idea what it had done. The valet glanced at her car, hesitated a second too long, then waved her forward. She parked anyway. This time she didn't walk in as the woman from earlier. She walked in like someone with a mission. Her heels clicked on the polished floor, every sound deliberate. At the counter, the same clerk, Rebecca Shaw, froze. Her eyes widened. "Ma'am, I thought you..." Clara cut her off with a calm smile. "Left?" "No, I had some business to handle." She reached into her bag, pulling out a thin navy blue folder with gold lettering across the top, Magnolia Hospitality Group, LLC. Rebecca blinked, trying to process what she was seeing. I don't think I... Is your manager still here?" Clara asked. Rebecca nodded quickly. "Yes, but good. Go get him." The confidence in Clara's tone left no room for argument. The clerk disappeared behind the door marked "Staff Only," and Clara let her gaze wander around the lobby. Couples checked in, bellhops rolled suitcases, soft jazz played from the speakers. Everything looked calm, elegant, normal, just like it had an hour ago when she was told she didn't belong. Now, standing here again, she felt the weight of the past hour lift from her shoulders. Not gone, just lighter. The manager appeared, the same man with the crisp white shirt and polished shoes. "Ms. Jefferson," he said cautiously, remembering her name this time. "I thought Wire solved the situation." "Not yet," Clara said evenly, "but we're about to." She handed him the folder. Inside were copies of legal documents, signed and stamped. His face changed as he read the first page. "I don't think you understand," he started, voice trembling slightly. "I understand perfectly," Clara replied. "That's the purchase agreement for Magnolia Hospitality's most recent acquisition, the Magnolia Grand Hotel." The color drained from his face. "You mean yes," she said, her voice calm but sharp. "I'm one of the new owners." A murmur rose from the lobby as a few guests turned to look. Rebecca had reappeared, standing frozen behind the counter, her mouth slightly open. Clara turned to her, still composed. "You remember me, don't you? The woman who wasn't the kind of guest you rent to from the street." Rebecca stammered. Didn't mean Clara held up a hand. "It's all right. You don't have to explain. You just showed me exactly what this place still teaches people to see." The manager glanced around nervously, lowering his voice. "Miss Jefferson, please. Can we talk in private?" "No," Clara said firmly. "This happened in public. We'll handle it right here." The air in the lobby thickened. Even the jazz music seemed to fade. Clara stepped closer, her voice low but carrying weight. "See? When you've lived long enough in this country, you get used to doors being closed in your face. You get used to pretending it doesn't hurt. But sometimes..." She paused, her eyes locking on the clerk's. "Sometimes it's the same doors you end up owning later." The manager swallowed hard. "You didn't realize?" "No, you didn't," she said, "but now you do." She looked around the lobby again, at the guests watching from behind their suitcases, at the staff who had gone silent. "I'm not here to humiliate anyone, but things are going to change, and it starts tonight." Her phone buzzed in her purse. She ignored it. The manager finally found his voice. "What do you want us to do?" "Simple," Clara said. You're going to treat every person who walks through those doors like they belong here, because this hotel is supposed to stand for Southern grace, not Southern exclusion." Rebecca's eyes glistened. "I'm sorry, Miss Jefferson. I really am." Clara exhaled slowly. "You don't owe me an apology. You owe it to the next person who walks in looking like me." A long silence followed. Somewhere near the elevator, a bell chimed. Then Clara smiled, not the polite kind, but the kind that came from deep, hard-earned peace. "Now I'll take that room, please. Top floor." Rebecca nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she typed. "Yes, ma'am." "Right away!" As Clara signed the guest slip, she noticed her reflection in the counter's glass surface, still proud, still strong. When she turned toward the elevator, a man in a gray suit stepped forward. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said softly. "I just wanted to say, that was powerful." Clara nodded. It wasn't power. It was presence. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside, the folder tucked under her arm, her head held high. As the doors closed, the last thing she saw was Rebecca standing behind the counter, staring down at her own reflection, finally seeing herself for what she had done. Clara didn't sleep much that night. The suite was quiet, the sheets crisp and expensive, but her mind was wide awake. She sat by the window, Charleston's city lights stretching across the horizon, reflecting off the harbor like a sea of fireflies. She should have felt victorious. She'd stood up for herself, claimed her ownership, made them see her. But the satisfaction came with a bitter aftertaste. Because deep down, Clara knew this wasn't just about one hotel clerk's ignorance. It was about a system that taught people to look at her and see less. At dawn, she poured herself a cup of coffee and called James Porter, her business partner in the Magnolia deal. "Morning, Clara," his voice came through sleepy but curious. "You're up early. Everything all right?" "Not exactly," she said, pacing by the window. "Something happened at the hotel last night. Something we can't ignore." She told him everything from the lobby humiliation to the moment she handed over the ownership papers. There was a long pause on the other end. "Damn," James muttered finally. "You want to make a statement?" "I want to make a change," Clara replied. "We didn't buy this hotel just to own it. We bought it to fix it." Later that morning, the management team was called into the conference room on the mezzanine level. The same marble floors, but the energy was different, tighter, cautious. The staff whispered as Clara entered, wearing a navy blazer and calm determination. Rebecca sat near the back, pale and fidgeting. The general manager, Mr. Whitaker, cleared his throat as Clara took the front seat. "Miss Jefferson," he began carefully, "I think we all owe you an apology for last night's misunderstanding." Clara placed her folder on the table. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a mirror. The room went quiet. "You all saw a black woman walk through that door and assumed she didn't belong. You assumed I couldn't afford to be here, that I was out of place. You didn't see a customer. You saw a stereotype." One of the senior clerks shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, we've just been following hotel policy." "Whose policy?" Clara asked, cutting him off. "The one that says who looks like they can afford comfort. The one that decides who's respectable based on what they wear or the color of their skin?" No one answered. She leaned forward, her tone steady but fierce. "Policies don't create bias. People do, and this hotel's been running on the same silent rules for too long." James entered the room halfway through the meeting, holding a stack of reports. "We've done our research," he said. "Out of over 100 guest complaints in the last 2 years, nearly half came from people of color. Most said they felt unwelcome, disrespected, or watched. That's not coincidence. That's culture." Mr. Whitaker wiped his forehead. "We didn't realize." Clara's gaze sharpened. "That's the problem. You didn't want to realize." She stood, walking slowly around the room. "Do you know what it feels like to have to prove you belong? Every day, every room, every conversation?" She paused behind Rebecca, who sat frozen. "That's the exhaustion of being black in America. You can't ever just be. You always have to justify your right to exist." Rebecca's voice came out shaky. "Miss Jefferson, I swear I didn't mean to." "I know," Clara said softly. "That's what makes it worse. You didn't mean it. But it happened anyway, and it happens every single day to people who look like me. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioner. Then Clara looked directly at Whitaker. Here's what's going to happen. Starting next week, every staff member from the front desk to upper management will complete bias and empathy training. Not the kind with PowerPoint slides and free donuts. Real training. Led by professionals. Real conversations about race, respect, and representation. Whitaker nodded slowly. Understood. And from now on, Clara added, we're implementing a new hiring initiative. More diverse staff, more black leadership. If this hotel is going to represent Southern hospitality, it's going to mean all of the South, not just part of it. James smiled faintly from across the room. Clara gathered her things ready to leave, but turned at the door. One more thing, she said, looking at Rebecca. You'll stay. You'll go through the training too. You'll learn. Then you'll help lead it. If we're going to build change, we start with accountability, not punishment. Rebecca blinked, surprised. You're not firing me? No, Clara said. You'll work for me instead. A murmur spread through the room's surprise, confusion, maybe even admiration. Clara walked out, heels clicking like punctuation marks behind her. As the door closed, James caught up to her. That was bold. Clara gave a tired smile. Change always is. Outside, the morning sun poured through the tall glass windows. The same hotel, same marble, but something in the air had shifted. For the first time, the Magnolia Grand didn't feel like it was owned by history. It felt like it was owned by her. Hi, friend. Before we continue, I need your help. We've noticed the channel losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and helps us keep delivering great content for you. Your support means everything. Comment your city or country below. Let's see how far this community reaches. Thank you now. Back to the story. 2 weeks later, Charleston shimmered under the thick summer air. The Magnolia Grand looked the same from the outside, elegant, historic, perfectly polished, but inside, the atmosphere was shifting. Staff were quieter, more careful. The new training program had started, and whispers about the incident still floated between the front desk and the kitchen. For Clara, things hadn't quieted at all. Every morning began with emails, press requests, investor calls. The story of the hotel owner mistaken for a guest had spread faster than wildfire. Some called her a hero, others called her too sensitive. She didn't care much for either. But the noise outside wasn't the problem. The noise inside was. That evening, she sat in her office overlooking the courtyard, a converted corner suite she'd claimed as her workspace. The golden hour light spilled across the desk, catching the photo frame beside her and her son, Malcolm, standing in front of her first business years ago. He was her pride, a social justice attorney in New York, sharp, idealistic, relentless. She dialed his number. He picked up on the second ring. Hey, Ma, I saw the article. You really stirred up some dust down there. Clara smiled faintly. Somebody had to. How's work? Busy. We just filed a case against a property group discriminating against tenants. Ironically, one of their hotels is in South Carolina, too. Figures, she said dryly. Malcolm paused, then his tone changed softer but edged with concern. Ma, I gotta ask, why are you still there? You proved your point. You could let corporate handle the rest. Clara leaned back in her chair, gazing out the window. Because I'm not doing this just for me, baby. I'm doing it for every person who's ever been looked at like they don't belong. I'm tired of seeing that look. Yeah, but this fight, it never ends, Ma. You know that. You've been fighting it since I was a kid. She chuckled, but it wasn't light. And I'm still standing. That's what worries me, Malcolm said. You shouldn't have to keep proving your worth. You've earned your peace. His words hit her harder than she expected. Baby, she said after a long pause, you think I do this because I like fighting? I do it because if I don't, someone else will go through the same thing tomorrow. Maybe someone like you. Malcolm sighed. You raised me to fight too, but sometimes I wonder if all this fighting is just surviving, not living. The silence stretched, heavy but honest. I saw the pictures online. he continued quietly. You looked strong. But I know that face, Ma. That's your don't let them see you bleed face. Clara looked down at her coffee, now cold. Maybe, but I bled enough in private over the years. She stood and walked to the window. Below, guests strolled through the courtyard, the fountain glowing under string lights. A young black couple held hands, laughing, completely unaware of the war that had been fought for them to walk there without fear. You know what's funny? She said softly. When I was your age, I used to dream about walking into places like this and being invisible. Just another guest. Now that I can, I don't want invisibility anymore. I want visibility the kind that makes people see who built this country, who survived it, who still stands in it. Malcolm didn't respond right away. Then he said, I get that, Ma, but promise me you'll take care of yourself too. I will, she said, smiling into the phone. Don't you worry. Your mama's tougher than she looks. They said their goodbyes, and after she hung up, Clara sat for a long moment, her heart both heavy and full. She thought about everything her generation had endured, the slurs, the looks, the ceilings that never quite broke. And now, even with all the progress, the fight still wasn't over. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. It was Rebecca holding a notebook and looking nervous. Ms. Jefferson? Sorry to bother you. I wanted to thank you for not firing me. Clara motioned for her to come in. You've been doing the training? Yes, ma'am. It's harder than I expected. Listening to people talk about their experiences, the things I've said without realizing. It's been eye-opening. Clara nodded. That's the point. Growth isn't supposed to be comfortable? Rebecca hesitated. Can I ask you something? When you were standing in front of me that night, when I treated you like that, what were you thinking? Clara looked at her for a long moment. Honestly, I was thinking how tired I was. How many times I'd had to swallow my pride just to stay calm. But I was also thinking about how, if I lost control, you'd walk away thinking you were right about me. And I couldn't let that happen. Rebecca's eyes watered. I don't know how to fix what I did. You don't fix it, Clara said. You learn from it. You do better next time. And the time after that? Rebecca nodded slowly, tears slipping down her cheek. Thank you for giving me that chance. Clara managed a small, weary smile. Just make it count. When Rebecca left, Clara turned back to the window. The sound of the fountain mixed with distant city traffic, steady and endless. The fight had changed shape over the years, from lunch counters to boardrooms, from protest signs to property deeds. But the mission was the same, not to win every battle, but to keep showing up, to stand tall, and to be seen. The following month, the Magnolia Grand looked different, not in architecture or color, but in energy. The air was lighter, the smiles less forced. The bias training had finished its second round, and staff meetings now included words like accountability, representation, and grace. Clara saw the change in small moments, the way the bellhop greeted older guests with warmth, how the front desk staff chatted easily with visitors of every background. It wasn't perfect, not yet, but it was a start. That morning, Clara walked through the lobby on her way to a meeting when she heard a voice behind her. Ms. Jefferson? It was Rebecca. She looked nervous but determined, a folder clutched in her hands. Yes, Rebecca? Clara asked gently. I wanted to show you something. Rebecca hesitated, then handed her the folder. Inside were printed notes, survey results, and a proposal titled Hospitality with Humanity. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, Rebecca continued, about how we don't fix things, we learn and do better. So I started working on a new guest service initiative, one that includes bias awareness, empathy communication, and cultural sensitivity. Clara flipped through the pages, quietly impressed. You wrote this yourself? Yes, ma'am. I used what we learned in training and added some things I researched, like how first impressions are shaped in under 10 seconds, and how tone alone can make people feel respected or rejected. I think if we adopt this program across our chain, it could set a new standard. Clara looked up. You're talking about changing the whole industry. Rebecca smiled nervously. Well, we have to start somewhere. For the first time, Clara saw something real in Rebecca's eyes. Not guilt, not fear, but understanding. Let's present it to the board next week, Clara said. If they approve it, we'll roll it out across all our properties. Rebecca's shoulders relaxed. Thank you, Ms. Jefferson, for believing in me. Clara nodded. Don't thank me yet. Thank yourself, you did the work. Later that afternoon, the two women stood side by side in the conference room. James Porter and the rest of the leadership team sat across from them as Rebecca clicked through her slides. She spoke with steady confidence, explaining how the program could become part of every guest interaction. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then James leaned forward. This is good, really good. The head of HR nodded. It's honest, it's actionable, it's exactly what the industry needs. When the vote passed unanimously, Rebecca exhaled with relief. Clara reached over and gave her shoulder a light squeeze. See what happens when you turn a mistake into a mission? That night, the hotel hosted its first community dinner and open event to welcome locals, staff, and guests together. The lobby smelled of roasted chicken and sweet cornbread, jazz music floating softly through the air. Rebecca helped serve food, laughing with guests, her energy transformed, and Clara, for the first time in weeks, allowed herself to sit and simply observe. She thought about all the times she'd been turned away, doubted, or dismissed. About how many faces like hers had been told, we don't rent to people like you. And now, here she was, watching a room full of people break bread in a place that once excluded them. Midway through dinner, a young man approached her. He was maybe 25, dressed neatly but humble. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said shyly. "Are you Miss Jefferson?" "I am," she smiled. "What's your name?" "Darius," he said. "I wanted to say thank you. I work at the front desk now. I almost didn't apply 'cause I thought they wouldn't hire someone like me. But then I heard what happened, how you changed things here. It made me believe I might belong." Clara's throat tightened. "You do belong, Darius, and don't let anyone ever make you question that again." He nodded, eyes shining. "I won't." "Thank you, ma'am." When he walked away, Clara sat quietly for a moment, letting the emotions settle. Across the room, Rebecca was refilling drinks, laughing with a group of guests. The image struck her two women, worlds apart, now working side by side to build something better. Later that night, as the event ended, Rebecca approached Clara again. Her voice was soft. "You know, I used to think racism was about hate. Now I see it's often about blindness, not seeing what's right in front of you. I was blind for a long time." Clara nodded slowly. "And now?" "Now," Rebecca said, "I'm learning to see, even when it's uncomfortable." Clara smiled. "That's the first step toward real change." As the last guests drifted out and the lights dimmed, Clara stood alone in the middle of the lobby, the same lobby where she'd once been humiliated. The marble floor gleamed beneath her feet. The chandelier shimmered softly above. This time, though, she didn't feel like she was standing in someone else's house. This time, she felt at home. And for the first time in a long time, Clara Jefferson, daughter of the South, survivor of 1,000 small injustices, felt something she hadn't dared to feel in years: hope. A year later, the Magnolia Grand had become something new. The front desk had changed. The energy had changed. The kind of people walking through the doors had changed too. Families, business travelers, artists, couples all colors, all stories checked in without a second glance of suspicion. And every time Clara walked through the lobby, someone stopped her. A guest, a staff member, a young trainee. They'd shake her hand, thank her, or tell her how they'd heard her story. It wasn't fame, she felt it was validation. This morning, she stood near the entrance, watching the sunlight spill across the marble floors. A new plaque gleamed near the front desk. It read, "Respect is not optional." Dedicated to every guest who was told they didn't belong. Rebecca had suggested it. Clara had approved it without hesitation. The door swung open, and a family of 3 stepped in: parents and a young boy, maybe 9. The father was black, the mother Latina. The clerk, a new hire named Darius, greeted them with a warm smile. "Welcome to the Magnolia Grand. You checking in or joining us for brunch?" Clara couldn't help smiling. A year ago, that same question would have sounded cautious, guarded. Now it sounded like music, easy, natural, human. She turned and made her way toward the courtyard cafe. James was already there, sipping his coffee. "Morning, boss lady," he teased. "Morning," she replied, sliding into the seat across from him. "Hard to believe it's been a year," he said, looking around. "You did it," Clara chuckled. "We did it. But it's not done. It never really is." He nodded. "Still, this place feels different. Feels like home." She looked out at the fountain, where guests sat chatting under umbrellas. That's the point. Everyone deserves a space that feels like that. Rebecca walked by just then, carrying her laptop, smiling as she passed. She paused. "We're launching the training at 2 more hotels next month. Just thought you'd want to know." Clara grinned. "Good work, Rebecca. Keep it going." When she left, James leaned back. "You think people ever really change?" Clara took a moment before answering, not all at once, but one story, one experience, one conversation at a time. "Yeah, I think they can." She stood, smoothing her jacket, and looked out at the lobby again. A white couple was laughing with a black concierge over directions. A group of tourists posed for pictures under the chandelier. The world wasn't perfect, it wasn't healed, but for this small corner of it, something had shifted. She remembered her father's words, the ones that guided her through every storm. "We don't fight with our fists anymore, baby. We fight by showing up," and that's exactly what she had done. As she walked toward the exit, a young woman stopped her. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Are you Miss Jefferson? I just wanted to say thank you. My mother told me your story. It made me believe I could start my own business one day." Clara smiled, eyes kind. "Then you better go do it, honey. The world needs what you've got." The woman nodded, emotional, and Clara stepped outside into the Charleston sun. The air was warm, the kind of southern warmth that wrapped around you like memory. She looked back once more at the Magnolia Grand, not just a building, but a reminder. Change wasn't a single moment. It was a ripple, a movement, a story retold by those who finally felt seen. And as the breeze carried the scent of the harbor, Clara whispered to herself, "We're still rising. Hi, friend. Before you go, if this story moved you even a little, please take a second to subscribe to the channel. It's quick, it's free, and it helps us keep bringing you powerful stories like this one. Drop a comment with your city or country. Let's see how far this community reaches. And don't forget to share this video so more people around the world can feel what you just felt. Thank you for being part of this journey. Now, on to the next story.